It's out to deck. How you doing, guys?
Thank you.
It's like watching a film, but then all of a sudden we're in a film.
Roughly 5,000 metres above sea level. To give you an idea, that's about 700 metres on top of Kilimanjaro.
Greece Psycho still going.
Beau, good morning. How you doing?
Hey, man.
G'day, fellas. G'day, watchers. Hi.
Yeah, thank you so much for thank you so much for joining us, mate. That was really appreciate it. And yeah, what a film to finish things off. That's absolutely great. I loved it. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, mate, great film. I mean, it must be a bit weird for you both for us to be banging on about it still, because it was a while ago for you, eh? What's that, like 13 years ago or something? You're out actually doing that?
Yeah, not many people ask me about Africa by kayak these days. It's sort of been trumped by running around the block a bunch of times or eating a bunch of beans or, you know, getting to work a weird way. So, yeah, it was quite novel when you folks said, hey, we want to show Africa. I said, great. It's nice to see it's still a little bit relevant. It's a really flawed film. And I said that to my wife yesterday over dinner. I said, yeah, these guys are showing Africa by kayak for their Armchair Festival. And I said, well, which surprised me because it's a flawed film. And she said, it's not a flawed film. It's been seen by millions of people and they like it. And I said, well, maybe it's just me. I don't particularly like a lot of things about it anymore, and yet it's got a real authenticity at its heart. And I think that sort of comes through.
Yeah, you've got to judge it at its time as well. You know, and it was, to be fair, over a decade old. And when I watched it, it came up on my YouTube feed. And it still felt like a brand new adventure film to me. And I thought, you know, it was brilliant. It was. I think the intro is perfect for YouTube because the intro makes you're starting to talk about your nipples chafing, which got my attention straight away. And then there's got a whole serious message behind it, and I think it's a really good film, man. Like great takeaway and about what adventure means. And it wasn't really about, you know, you basically said it's not the destination, it's the journey or whatnot. So it was really good. I thought it was everything. Personally, I thought it was everything that adventure film should be about. So. Fair play.
Yeah, I suppose it makes sense to appeal to a couple of blokes who travelled around the joint in a sidecar across the world. In many respects, Africa was a version of that. It was super basic in that I just took 6 months off work and raised enough money just by working whatever jobs for several years beforehand. Super low budget, super low key, not really into sponsors and stuff. Made a lot of our camera housings and, you know, things that were mounted to the kayak. And look, not banging on about the flaws of it, but it's very one-dimensional. And it's basically just me holding a camera or someone else holding a camera on me. It's super, there's not a lot of movement in it. There's no drone footage or helicopter footage. And, you know, so a lot of people have to, you got to trust the viewer to make up a lot of the gaps. And I suppose that maybe its strength too, is that it's lacking things that people can fill in.
Yeah.
Do you feel like,
I think, yeah, go on, Reece.
do you feel it was a challenge to film then, Beau, or not so much? Like I say, I guess it is a lot of it is like, you know, the camera's on the boat with you. So in one sense that seems easy, but also you're dealing with all the elements at the same time, right?
Yeah, look, I've since learned since 2007 when I shot that and did the paddle, to be a bit more candid on camera. I think I was still a bit, look, I was mostly Beau, but there's still a time when the red light comes on and you become a red light person and you don't really realize you're doing it until hindsight. When I watch it now, I think, you know what, I'm not sure that was my internal monologue really speaking the truth. For the most part, I think that it's fairly transparent, but look, to go to your question of whether it was hard, it was because I'm knackered every day after paddling or anxious about where I'm going to go next. So you get a bit sick of having to constantly put on film what's taking place, let alone the fact that when you wash up on shore after 8 or 9 hours of paddling and then you got to go make a film, you know, you just want to sit in the shade and drink tea or beer or whatever the hell you can get your hands on, and you've got to go and make shots. Yeah, sometimes that became a bit too much. And that's why, you know, there's a lot that went unsaid or unfilmed.
Yeah. But I think, like you say, the film does feel really authentic, and it is like just you doing this adventure. And I feel like it's kind of very honest. And I mean, it really feels like we're there with you when you're like out in the middle of nowhere, and it really felt like you were really in the middle of nowhere and very lonely kind of thing. It's really isolating. I mean, what was your background before this trip? Talking about the adventure itself, like, were you used to that kind of thing? Because that would scare me to death, being out on a beach that seems to disappear overnight and being for days on end and stuff on your own. How was that?
Yeah, look, my fears in life, I've been constantly kind of needling at this and poking myself about what scares me. And ultimately, I think I was attracted to sea kayaking as a 20-year-old because I wasn't a sea person. I was never a great surfer, or, you know, I don't live on the coast. I live not far from the coast, but far enough away to not be a coastal person. I'm far more comfortable ranging around the hills and trees and dirt and, you know, the folds of land as opposed to the swell of the sea. And so fundamentally, the sea scared me, and in many respects still does. I have a real raw fear of the sea, even though I have capacities now to navigate over it or through it or around it. I suppose Africa didn't scare me when I was on land, and yet land was probably where my most, you know, other than big swell, and I'll get to that, you know, there is a deep fear of being taken out by a big wave, and that almost happened. But fundamentally, if I'm on land and I know that people exist on land and I know that I'm not there to screw them over, I felt really safe, even if it was in a wilderness area or a conservation park or somewhere where poachers were known to roam. I just thought, well, you know, you sort of, I'm not a fatalist. I think you sort of put yourself into positions where good and bad things happen, but that's a choice. That's not some sort of divine intervention. And I just sort of trusted that I'll be okay if I'm not a dick to the locals, and I make okay decisions at sea.
Yeah, for sure. Very logical way to think about it, man. Yeah, but I mean, it must have felt very real for you at the time, because obviously within the film there's that whole backstory of that, you know, there's another adventurer out doing that big kayaking trip, and a friend of yours and stuff, and sadly lost his life to what you were, not the same thing, but what you were doing. It must have felt very real for you at the time, sort of the fears of what the water, you know, the power the water has.
Yes, you know, and it's that you can fall into lots of cliches with trips and films like this about, you know, the journey being more important than the destination. And I've trumped that since, saying that, look, that's not necessarily true, because a journey only ever exists if you have a destination often. Now, you can have a destination that's fairly fluid, and then it all does become about the journey itself, and that's all good and well. But there's nothing wrong with having endpoints too. I think humans kind of need them, whether that's a date or a time or a place or a person. I think that's very healthy. In saying that, you know, the thing with the, there's so many ways you can sort of pull yourself apart when you come back from a trip like this. You're not sure where to start. So you tend to just look at the lineal sort of nature of what you did, you know, where you started, where you finished, and all of this stuff in between, you make micro stories out of. When Andrew died at sea, I didn't think much of it then in Africa, because I didn't really want to sort of own up to the fact that you know, I could very easily do the very same thing that happened to him. You know, all the newspapers in Australia were kayaker dies at sea, and so my satellite phone, which I'd turn on once a day just to check on things, was full. It actually had a cache system where all the text couldn't come through. People were worried about me, and that really quite hit home. It was a bit of a moment, and so I tried to avoid that as much as I could, thinking about it, talking to people about it. And so, yeah, mortality came very sort of dawned on me halfway through the trip.
Yeah, makes sense, man. Yeah, it would have been, I think, you know, it's clearly you were really out there on your own in the elements. It was really, you know, quite the challenge. We've got so many questions coming in here, dude, and I'm just trying to keep up track with them at the same time. So if I'm looking down, I'm looking at the questions that are flying in there. There's loads of things.
Is James Bagshaw? He sort of said he's asked, do you like going on these adventures with other people, or do you prefer like sort of like by yourself. And I suppose that is like an interesting one with this, because you had at times you were with your friend, and then at times you were, you know, by yourself with this. I mean, generally speaking, what's your sort of preference? And I guess it adds different responsibilities, right, when you're with someone else and whatnot.
Yeah, well, James, that's always different in a sense. Although maybe it's not. My default is to go by myself because I trust the meat of myself. I know how far I can go. I really listen to my body, and I like my own company. I'm a bit. I'm becoming more antisocial the older I get, and I'm trying to get back my humor in life, but that's not always coming, because you're not as humorous by yourself. With others, they tend to bring out the humor in the world. Having Jared, this was very much a trip of 3 phases. Africa was that I had Jared there with me at the start, who was a really good mariner. You know, he's a yachty, he's a New Zealander and awesome at sea. He's really good he's a sailor. So he could read the sea better than me in a sense. And my job was to interpret transition of land to sea. You know, as a sea kayaker coming in and out of land all the time, I could read headlands and swell patterns and things that related to us getting on and off land. Whereas whilst at sea, he was your man. You know, he could read clouds beautifully, excellent at reading charts. When he left, because he got really sick, I shifted into solo bow, and I really got into that groove of traveling by the beat of my own drum, which I've sort of always done, and I loved it. And when he returned, and I offered him the trip of return, and not because I was his boss or whatnot, but I gave him my sort of endorsement. You know, you deserve to be here, Jared, because you were such an integral part of the first 2 months. And he came back, and he was out of shape a bit, and I was in solo mode, and it just didn't really work, you know, the last couple of months. And I really adored Jared. He's a great guy, but the trip was more dysfunctional. So I learned my lesson then to sort of do things by yourself when they need to be done by yourself. And I've since then sort of pushed myself into shared expeditions with crossing Bass Strait, which was just exceptional, because I got to be third party and just watch these other 2 guys who I really liked develop a relationship, and that was really cool.
Yeah, so I mean, that was one of the questions that came up as well. How did that Africa trip compare to crossing the Bass Strait, and which challenge, I guess, if you could say, was harder? Which was the more challenging thing to do?
Oh, Africa by far, because just because of Australia's a piece of cake to socially, and I suppose because of the social ease in Australia, things are just easy. You know, booking a bus ticket or getting across borders. We've got masses of red tape, but you can also avoid that as well. Whereas in Africa, I didn't know the lay of the land. I'm crossing international borders. You know, rules that, you know, I had a 10-ton boat license for a kayak, you know, and I couldn't get it out of the airport for 2 weeks because they thought I was trying to import a different kind of surfboard, you know. So there were these weird things that were real constraints that I had no control over. And to be honest, you know, I didn't have weather interpretation in Africa like I did for Bass Strait, and it was a piece of cake. And I say that with humility because it's still a committing piece of water, but it's only committing if you go out in crap weather, in a sense, or if you've got a low pressure system looming and you still depart, when now you've got all of the tools in the shed to tell you not to do that. So it was really good. It was a big mill pond out there with a slight riffle of wind all the time. It was beautiful. It came down to how much chafe you got and whether you had 3 coffees a day as opposed to 2. You know, it's very basic.
Yeah, cool. No, I love it. So, I mean, getting on some more of your other adventures then, you've done so much stuff. And I'd encourage anyone watching the feed just to go and plow through your YouTube channel for a day, because there's so much balmy content on there that we can't get into all of it tonight. But I think something I wanted to bring up was, you've kind of done this transition in life to go from making this sort of big adventure with Africa and stuff, and it's overseas. And we certainly did that with our trip, wanted to go and see what's miles away, something completely different and do something wild, to then seeing how you can have that kind of same experience on your doorstep. And you've kind of done that with a couple of your projects I've been watching, the Big Gum thing where you went and slept in your tree, and obviously the Human Beings comes to mind because that was just a mad adventure in itself. And I think at the moment, there's a lot of people here in the UK, especially I'm all over the world, locked down, can't leave their houses or within 5 kilometers of their houses and stuff. And I think maybe it'd just be cool to talk about a bit about the inspiration behind those projects and what drove you to do that stuff at home, and what other people could maybe think of doing to get that adventure fix from within sort of their own background.
Yeah, well, I suppose, I'm very much in a phase of life where we have a 1-year-old child behind me. I'm sitting in a half-finished house, as you can see with the house paper around me. I have lots of domestic half-finished things, and that includes a child that still needs lots to grow, and a property that needs finishing, and a film career and a writing career that's really only just starting to take off because paid work got in the way for an awful long time, and it was excellent. I had excellent paid work, but that's still not writing and filmmaking and being creative, which I think at my heart is probably what I really want to do. And my wife's given me the tick on that now, so I can sort of start to release it and go with it rather than trying to be a company man. So look, I'm in a phase now as a 40-year-old that is, and we use this word a bunch, privilege, right? But I've done the years of being a dirtbag younger bloke, traveling the world to go and see these exotic places. So for me to say now to your audience or to anyone and say, look, I think adventures can be had within 20 kilometers of your home or 10 miles of the river that you grew up on. Whilst it's true, it's still, that's my progression. I've got to this point now after going to the ends of the earth to know that I have these qualities in my home life. So I get it that people still have to go and see exotic places or something so different to know what they've got is pretty good or special or can be conceived as adventure.
Yeah.
So, maybe people can get it earlier, and half their luck. If you can feel what I'm feeling now as a 30-year-old, it means you've sort of trumped yourself having to travel a long way and burn up a bunch of carbon to get to a place that is exotic, but it's in many respects, it's as exotic as another place. And so I read this in Alain de Botton's The Art of Travel. There's this wonderful chapter in there where a bloke, he goes on a grand tour for 5 years. He's 20 and for 5 years, all he does is travel, never goes home. But because he did so much in that 5 years, he gets home and he unpacks for the next 50. Doesn't leave his house because he's so full of what took place in that 5 years. Half your luck if that can be your case. If you can go away and you can be full enough to then come back and be really content with what you've seen. And I think in a modern world where you can jump on a plane for £17 plus tax and go to Europe, it's so enticing, right? Why would, that costs the same as jumping in your car for 3 hours. So people do it. And so I get why we do it. And yet there's alternatives. And look, I just now know that as a practical measure, it makes more sense for me to do stuff more domestically. One, because it's a massive continent I live in. And two, it doesn't cost as much. My carbon footprint's less. And if I convince myself of it, there's massive adventures to be had right at my doorstep.
Yeah, for sure. And you've definitely put that to the test. We played your commute to work thing where we kicked off the evening as a bit of a trailer for the kayaking one. It's so fun to see you dragging that thing through those ditches and stuff. And honestly, I was a bit scared because I can imagine you're in Australia, all the creatures and creepy crawlies in those ditches.
Oh no, it's more the rednecks. We've got about 5% redneck in Australia, and they're the ones that are going to come out and abuse the hell out of you, call the cops, and it's just a pain in the ass. So. Once again, the people factor were the riskier things. But yeah, that was years ago, right? That was when I was a full-time academic at a university, and I'm no longer. That course has been shut down, and it's been really cool. Those two, the walk and the paddle to work, which were years ago now, come out in the next few weeks or the next month or so.
Cool.
And it's been ace remaking those films and doing some reshoots and really revisiting all the piles of footage because they were excellent. They were excellent adventures and excellent trips.
Yeah, for sure, man. And it comes across in the trailer anyway. I can't wait to see the whole thing then if that's about to come out. So, mate, I mean, I'm just being a bit selfish here and ignore some of the questions on the feed, but we got to talk beans because that was a lot of beans you ate in that film. And I really, when I saw the title, I thought this is, I'm a guy that's ridden around the world in a scooter and a sidecar, and this looks pretty gimmicky as a human being. And when I saw the title, and then when I watched the first bit, and I saw the background to it about the beans being tips on the floor and the whole thing. And actually, when it comes to the end, it was a huge journey. It really felt like you went on a huge journey into yourself there about what you're made of and what it's like to what is Beau basically. And that stuff in the supermarket at the end when you're saying that, you know, you basically are what you eat, it really sort of struck a chord. I'd encourage anyone to watch this film, by the way, guys. Go on to Beau's channel and watch The Human Being. But yeah, man, do you still eat beans?
A bit like sardines. I'm really lucky. I'm a bit of a billy goat. I just don't get sick of food. But it really did fascinate me, and I wanted to do that experiment. It's a total stunt or a gimmick of sorts, and yet the truth to it is, we all live our lives through food. You know, it's the strongest part of our culture. When a city is bombed somewhere, the last thing to leave or to get decimated is the food culture or the food. You know, buildings get rebuilt, but they're still making the same food as they're making the building. You know, it's such a massive part of our lives. We eat 3 or 4 or 8 or 10 times a day, and we do that for our whole life. So our decision making around what we shove in our gob is massive.
Yeah,
I know that well and truly. Anyone who's been a runner, or in fact not a runner, that's bullshit. I used running as my litmus test because it was a really good physical way to compare myself against my former self when I'm eating everything.
yeah.
But we all eat so much. I just thought, I'm going to eat all these beans. I'm going to eat my body weight. And I really want to drill down into how the hell I feel and what I can think, what my emotional self is like, etc. And it was fascinating. It really was an adventure in a tin of beans. And it was as impactful as paddling around Africa in terms of the insight it gave me of my humanity.
Yeah, it feels as real. When you open that tin of beans, you go, oh no, not that flavor again. It feels like something drastic's gone wrong on an expedition or something. So yeah, it's a really good little film, man. Questions just popped up here. Like, where do these ideas come from for you? Like, does it come easy to make these film ideas? Because it's really creative stuff, man.
Well, yes, ideas come easy, but ideas are cheap too because they come easy. And maybe I'm lucky that I get lots of ideas. But for every 10 that I think, and I write them down in an online document that I share with my production buddy, you know, of the 10 I write down, 2 get up. Because the others just might not have resonance, or they're just too hard to give a backstory to, because everything needs a backstory. You know, from making a junk paddle out of wood, which at surface level is about making a paddle, but it so isn't. It's about what we're surrounded by trees, but we can't become blinded by them because it's like air. So it became about the importance of wood and how it's so normalized that we don't often think of trees and wood being the same thing. So there's a subtext, there's a story there, and that needs to be told. Otherwise, it just becomes a paddle making film. So, yeah, stories are cheap. So then it's about bringing out the context of why is this a story? Why is it a story to you? And why might others give a damn? And what does it translate to them? And don't preach. It's about just telling a good story. And that's hard, and it's taken time to get that way. And it's vetting what is a good story and what is maybe not a good story.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I'm aware that it's probably coming to 8:30 near where you are, so don't keep it for too long. It's starting the day for you. One final thing to leave on, I suppose. Matthew Cole sort of mentioned that everything you're talking about here, you clearly have quite a positive outlook on life. I guess, where does that come from? Is that down to you, or is there like a ethos or a sort of philosophy behind it, or what are your thoughts on it all?
Yeah, good question, Matt. I get that a lot, and I never know, right? So when I've married a woman who I think is the most positive person on the planet, and she doesn't know where her positivity has come from. And she probably doesn't recognize it like I don't, in a sense. I don't always think I'm a positive person. I think I'm a grump sometimes, but I know that I know when I'm a grump, whereas other people, that might be their default, you know. I don't know where I've given optimism its sort of prevalence because it is my normal default. I don't know where it's come from. However, strategically, because, you know, other people have asked this, I think I'm an optimist because you just get more stuff done. And I like stuff getting done. When you're not an optimist, you tend to wallow in time wastage and what ifs and what are the problems with things rather than fixing those problems, or just not doing the thing that is giving you the problem and doing something else. I think there's great worth in that, because not everything works. So just try different things. And it makes me happy too, in a sense, because it keeps me busy, and being busy is my happiness.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, be positive, get stuff done. Yeah, oh, that's great, mate. Yeah, thank you so much. I think we've basically run out of time, and so I know you've got stuff to do today. So, again, thank you so much for letting us play Africa by Kayak. It really is a good film, and as Matt mentioned, head over to Beau's YouTube channel. There's a lot of cool things on there, and enjoy the rest of your day, mate. And
enjoy your Monday.
We'll speak to you at some point in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a whole bunch of films for you for the next sort of 12, 18 months or whatnot. And in fact, my 8:30 appointment here in Australia in the morning is finishing up these other films, these commute films, which are just, I reckon they're crackers. They're really good films. And so, and that's not just because it's not just me within them now. Now there's I've got 4 or 5 people that really throw themselves at these projects. And so we make them as a collective, and we're all pretty excited about it. So I look forward to sharing them with you.
Cool, man. Look forward to seeing them. Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much for coming on, Beau. Appreciate it, dude.
Thanks, fellas. Thanks, watchers. Good on you.
Cheers,
see you later, man. Thank you. Bye.
All right, guys. Lovely stuff. So, yeah, that was obviously Beau Miles we had on the last film night. We screened his film Africa by Kayak, and we had a little chat with Beau afterwards. It's a cracking film and a super, super interesting guy. What a way to finish off the Armchair Adventure Festival film nights, eh, mate?
Yeah, it was a corker, wasn't it? Struth, it was good, you could say.
Could do, yeah.
We're just no?
I don't know. What does struth actually mean?
Don't know, I think I've just seen it on Home and Away a few times.
Is that crikey?
Crikey, yeah. Sort of things they say down under.
Yeah.
Saying
that, that's because Beau's from down under. It's not like it's a really tenuous link to just saying struth. It's because he's Australian.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah. No, just to clear it up for anyone who's watching, you haven't just said struth.
No, I thought I'd play on the fact that we had Nozzy on.
Yeah, fair, right, yeah, cool.
Yeah.
What's coming up, mate?
Coming up in 3 weeks' time today, we've got the Armchair Adventure Festival Winter Edition. It's going to be a cold one, mate.
You might be, yeah.
We've got some chilly acts on, haven't we?
Oh, yeah. You would have some chilly acts.
Who have we released so far?
You what, sorry?
Who have we released so far?
Oh, right. Well, we released quite a few people at the actual festival. We Nick Sanders, MBE. Got a buy that man got. Mr. Adventure, you could say.
Yeah.
Filmic Rama. Went around the world on a motorcycle. And then he turned his motorcycle into a raft and sailed around the Darien. Pretty impressive. Not too many people do that.
No.
You got Good Heavens, Steph Jevons back on again. She's going to be joining us for one of our panels. That's will be a good one. And also got who was the last one?
Come on, mate. Mental Block. Kirk Williams.
Oh God, of course, yeah, Kirk, yeah. Kirk Williams, yeah, he'll be coming on. So he was obviously down in South America, sorry, when COVID stopped play. So yeah, cool one. So yeah, it'll be a really good one, guys. I'm really looking forward to it. Plenty more speakers to be announced starting from today. So,
yeah. Well, why don't we just say who's being announced today now?
All right, go on then.
It's Ben Morrison, the Flippy Floppy man. And I haven't made that up, mate. That's his thing, Flippy Floppy. That's what the boat is called, the Flippy Floppy, I think.
Wow, just tell people about it.
Basically, right, guys, Ben went on a mission to make a boat out of old flip-flops. It's not entirely made out of old flip-flops, to be transparent, but it is 100% made out of recycled plastic. And the whole idea is to prove that, there's a lot of, to change people's opinions on plastic waste, basically, mate, and put plastic to good use. So he's already taking it on a trip. He took it from the coast of Tanzania out to Zanzibar, 500 kilometers, or was it from Kenya to Tanzania, something like that? 500 kilometers of on this boat out in the open seas in a boat made out of plastic and recycled flip-flops. So very impressive stuff. And him and his team next year are going to plan a sort of expedition across or around Lake Victoria or something like that. And the idea is to go from community to community, changing people's opinions on how plastic's used. So very interesting guest, I think.
Indeed, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, there'll be plenty more, and I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna be a blast.
Would be a good one, won't it?
Mm.
Do you reckon you're, better prepared this time, mate, or
For the
the
festival,
festival itself?
yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you reckon you've done the scheduling a bit better? Because last time, by about 7 o'clock, people thought we were absolutely battered and we hadn't had a beer. It was just we were a bit tired.
No, we'll still probably have that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
But guys, yeah, we'll see you at the Armchair Adventure Festival.
yeah, for some
Or-
delusional adventure chat.
Or if you want to catch up with more stuff in the meantime, head over to our Patreon page where you can see the chats this week of Ed March and Kinga Chanajuska on her bike, who were also on the last film night. Pretty good. Or just wait, maybe with you next week.
Yeah, mate. But also, this whole time we've been plugging this Patreon thing, and admittedly, it has been just next week. Then you'll be able to watch it. So we've always been very honest about it and said, not much point. But now there is a point. There's a method in the madness, because the festival itself, you're going to be able to catch up on demand on the Patreon page. So you can watch it all live. It's all free. But then afterwards, if you think, I missed that slot with Ben Morrison, the Flippy Floppy Man, I'd like to catch it up, you can just go onto Patreon, pay £1, £2, £5 a month, whichever you fancy, and you'll be able to watch it probably right the way through till Christmas, maybe even longer. I don't know how long we'll put it on there for. But so the Armchair Adventure Festival on demand. It's a bit like getting an upgrade on your Sky Plus box, isn't it, mate?
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
Remember when they came in, when you could pause live TV?
Yeah,
Remarkable.
I guess so, yeah. We've been chatting now for about 10 minutes. Do you think anyone's listening?
I don't think anybody. If anybody got this far, please drop a comment in.
Yeah.
Just 'cause
So,
it'd
yeah,
be fun for us to know.
Just say I got that far.
Yeah, just let us know if you got this far.
Cool.
And if you did, I'll send you a sticker in the post. Drop a comment with your address. I'll get you a sticker in the post.
There you go.
Thanks, guys.